بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. Tonight we're going to continue with أخصر مختصرات the fiqh of Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala. And we stopped last week at the end of istinja, al-istinja wal-istijmar. So tonight we start faslun in this chapter, where this section is dealing with a siwak, miswak, which is, usually we say miswak. Tayyib, does everybody know what miswak is? Siwak and miswak. Siwak. Who doesn't know what it is first? Siwak. They all. Right? What is used? Stick. From what? A tree. Usually they call it oud. Wood. And there's a couple ways it's used, the term. Siwak is sometimes used for the action itself of cleaning, and siwak is sometimes used for the actual stick. What's that? Both of them are referred to as siwak. طيب. طيب. قال رحمه الله فصل يسن السواك بالعود كل وقت. So he starts off, the author rahimahullah, and he uses, again, it's going to keep coming like this. He uses the term yusannu, one of those 5 rulings, right? Yusannu, which is, he's saying it is sunnah, right? Which means that what? It's recommended. Meaning, that's a translation, but recommended Islamically means what?
If you do it, it's double sin against you. I mean, it's recommended that you do it, but there's no sin against you.
There you are. It's recommended to do it, but if a person doesn't do it, it's not a sinful act. It's not a punishable act by Allah Jalla wa Ala. So he says, يُسَنُّ السِّوَاكِ بِالْعُودِ كُلَّ وَقْتٍ. That siwak, the cleaning of the teeth with the siwak, is recommended at all times. He says bil-ud, and he specifies bil-ud, let's say wood, right? If you ever bought one here, they come in the plastic sometimes, right? Has anybody ever tried them? The ones out the plastic, how they taste?
Like moist.
Moist. What else? Bitter. Those, the ones in the plastic, they're okay. Right? They're okay. They prepackaged. They have some that are, you know how it's fresh. So when you use it, the point of using it is from tahar, is from cleaning, purifying the mouth and cleansing the mouth. So the point is to clean the teeth and to freshen the mouth. So the fresher the stick is, right, the miswak, the fresher it is, the siwak, the more it like burns when you use it, right? It's cleaning, it's not just, you know what I'm saying? It's not what we might know back in the days, a chew stick. I don't know if y'all remember them. Remember the chew stick? You just chew on it. It's a chew stick, they used to call it. It's not a chew stick for chewing, it's for cleaning. So if you get a fresh siwak and you use it, you can feel it. Cleaning, you can feel it, right? Almost like if you use mouthwash. You know, some mouthwashes tingles, you can feel it, right? If you get a fresh siwak, you can feel it working like that. If you get like a, you know, some of them don't really have that burn like that. They might be that, may not be that fresh. No, I don't. Here, I don't know where you get fresh siwak from. But if you go on Hajj or Umrah, they're all over. Especially around the Haram, they're all over. There's people right there, you might want to. But you have to see that. Whatever you do, don't let them, whatever you do, you let them cut it. You don't hold it while they cut it. It can be an accident. But he says, So the using of the siwak is recommended all the time. It's always a recommendation to use the siwak all the time. He says, إِلَّا لِصَائِمْ بَعْدَ الزَّوَالِ فَيُقْرَأ. He says, he mentions one time where it's disliked. He says, yuqra. And this is how the book goes. All these ahkam, those five that we spoke about, they keep coming back and forth. As is always something, everything we do, every action that the mukallaf, that a person does, there's a hukum, there's a ruling connected to it. Okay? So it says there's one time when the siwak, using the siwak is disliked. And he says that is after the zawal al-shams. For the person who's fasting. For the person who's fasting, it says it's disliked to use the siwak, let's say after dhuhr. طيب. Why is that? Yes. There you go, that hadith. The hadith that the smell coming from the person's mouth that is fasting is a beloved smell to Allah Jalla wa'ala. That Allah loves that smell that comes from the person's mouth that is fasting. Even if the people may not like it, right? But it's a smell that Allah loves from the person who sacrifices. They're eating, they sacrifice their desire. So the smell is coming from their mouth while they're fasting, and that's a smell that is loved by Allah. So to use the siwak will remove that smell. So some of the scholars say that it is disliked to use the siwak after the zawal, after, for example, let's say dhuhr. In general, let's say dhuhr, after dhuhr. Right? But the zawal could be early. It doesn't mean midday, 12 o'clock. The zawal al-shams connected to dhuhr, connected to salat al-dhuhr. طيب. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that if it wasn't a hardship, he didn't see it as a hardship on the ummah, that he would have commanded the ummah to use the siwak when? It's two narrations. Every time we make wudhu, and in another narration, every time we make salat. Right? So the siwak is from the sunnah. It's from the sunnah. طيب. So he mentions one dislike time. That dislike time, all the ulama don't agree on that. But this is not a debate, a book of debate. It's just worth mentioning. He says, وَيَتَأَكَّدُ عِنْدَ الصَّلَاةٍ وَنَحْوِهَا وَتَغَيُّرْ فَمٍ وَنَحْوِهِ. He said, the siwak is recommended to use it when? All the time. He says it is even emphasized on using it at the time of the salah. At the time of the salah, it's even more emphasized to use the siwak when we go to stand before Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Which shows when we go to pray, that's going to come in Kitab al-Salah, we should go in our best. If we have the ability, we should go to pray in our best. We should try to look our best when we go to the salah. For the person who has the ability, I'm not talking about somebody who, you know what I'm saying, you're coming from work or you're in the middle, you're moving around, you're coming from work, it's time to pray. But the person who comes from the house, they come from a comfortable state where they're able to, they have beautification for the salah, as mentioned in the Quran. But we'll do that in Kitab al-Salah, inshallah. طيب. He says, so it's recommended for the person, it's highly recommended. It's recommended all the time, but it's highly recommended for the salah. And things like the salah, like wudhu, or when the mouth, there's a smell coming from the mouth. It doesn't necessarily mean that the smell is a stench all the time. It doesn't have to be a bad smell, but, right, you might have ate something. And there's a smell of food. Food is on the breath. When the mouth turns, it has a different smell to it. It's also highly recommended to use the siwak. But now he says, was sunnah. Sunnah. Because he just went from recommended, and then he mentioned something that was highly recommended, but before that, disliked. Then he went to something that is highly recommended, now he goes back to something that is sunnah. Now, these things that are sunnah, he mentions 11 things. 11 things that are sunnah. Some of these things, or some of the ulama in this chapter, they call this chapter the Siwak. In the Sunan, The sunan of wudhu. The recommended acts to do when you make wudhu. This is important. There's no title chapter here, right? But if you look at some of the longer books or some of the explanations, they call this chapter, Bab Siwak, was Sunan and Wudhu. The chapter about Siwak and the recommended things a person should do in Wudhu. And in some of the shuruh, it also has the chapter of a tajammul, the chapter of beautifying, a person beautifying himself like that. Things that we do to enhance the look or to enhance the appearance. طيب, he says, Sunnah bada'atu bil ayman fihi. The sunnah is to start by start with the siwak, by cleaning the right side of the mouth first. That's the first one. Al-bada'a bil-ayman fihi. So a person takes the siwak, and all of this, a person has to be conscious, right? Again, it's not a chew stick. It's ibadah, right? As it's from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a person starts with the right side of the mouth first. He says also, وَفِي طُهْرٍ وَشَأْنِهِ كُلِّهِ. And he says also sunnah, to start with the right side in tuhr, when a person is purifying himself in everything that they do. That it's recommended to start with the right. And we did a little detail last week about when do we do things with the right and when do we do things with the left, right? The right is used for things that are what? Clean and honorable things. And the left is used for things that are more or less dirty, dishonorable things, cleaning yourself and things like that. So that was number 2. Starting with the right side and issues of purifying and cleansing yourself. And in general, in all things, to start with the right, except for those exceptions. Number 3, وَالدِّهَانٌ غِبًّا. It is also recommended, sunnah, that a person greases their hair. Not every day. Every other day. Sunnah is that a person greases their hair. Not every day, every other day. Now what if a person greases their hair every day? Hukm. What's the ruling on greasing your hair every day? Right, is it permissible to grease your hair every day? Is it permissible, is it allowed in Islam to grease your hair every day? How do we know? What's the hukm on greasing your hair? What's the sunnah?
Because the sunnah is every other day, and if you do it other than every other day, it's not sunnah.
Right, it's not a sin to grease your hair every day, right? I'm not talking about from a doctor's standpoint, what's the effect of too much grease and all that kind of stuff. Or cream, whatever a person prefers. But the sunnah is to every other day. That was number 3. Number 4, وَاقْتِحَالٌ فِي كُلِّ عِينٍ ثَلَاثًا. The fourth thing, and this is why some of the ulama put the title chapter on this, tajammul, beautifying a person, beautifying, enhancing their appearance, because greasing the hair is from, enhancing the appearance, making sure a person looks right, right? And this one also, using kuhul. You know kuhul? There you go, the kuhul for the eyes. Using kuhul in the eyes, in each eye, 3 times, right? اكتحال في كل عين ثلاثا. Using the kuhul in the eyes from the sunnah. For men. Now, he didn't go into detail, and it's not really the mahal for that, but there's different types of kuhul. Some kuhul is used as medicine. It strengthens the eyesight. Some is just decoration, it's different types, right? Sisters, the women, they use kuhul. Women may use it for purification. But there's other types of kuhul that is used for the strengthening of the eyesight. I think it's called, I forgot the name of it, Ithmid, I think. I can't remember the name of it. But it's also used for beauty. Question? Huh? No, not eyeliner. Not eyeliner. Even though they may do the same thing, the difference is kuhul if you get the right type. Eyeliner, not that I know of, Allah, it doesn't serve as a medication. Sunnah is, you look good, and it serves as medicine for the eyes. طيب. It says the next sunnah, the next recommended thing, وَنَظَرٌ فِي مِرْآةٍ. Looking in the mirror is recommended to look in the mirror. What's the benefit of looking in the mirror? Make sure you're straight, right? That's why they say Islam, the Aql Salim, the person who has a Salim intellect, that Islam agrees, it makes sense. You hear a lot of people, they say they accept Islam because it makes sense. Stuff made sense, stuff that I heard in other places didn't make sense. With Islam, it makes sense. But a person who's not being biased, right, with an open heart, then it makes sense. طيب. Number 6, at-tatayyub. To smell good. Use oils that smell good. At-tatayyub is also from the recommended acts. What about women? Can women use perfume or smell goods in the house, indoor? طيب. We won't go too far into that, but if sisters don't know, there are hadith regarding the woman who sprays herself with perfume or something like that and exits the home and goes outside like that. And there are reasons behind it. And the class that's on Monday, which is the Muqaddimah Shari'ah, the introduction to the divine law, it's important to know that behind these rulings, halal, haram, the recommended, disliked, is hikmah, it's wisdom behind the rule. It's a wisdom behind the woman covering herself. It's a wisdom behind cleaning off before we pray. There's a wisdom behind everything we do. Everything that has been legislated has the hikmah behind it. Allah's wisdom behind it. If we don't know it, that doesn't mean that it's not hikmah, it's no wisdom. That means we don't know. It doesn't mean we're just doing it just because. There's wisdom behind covering the awrah. Right? There's a chapter in Kitab al-Salah where, for example, you're in a situation where there are a bunch of people, or it could be, for example, in a jail, there's a bunch of people that are naked, no clothes on. There's men and women in the room. Muslims. If the Muslims are in a situation like this, and it's time to pray, do they pray? No clothes. How they gonna pray? We pray a normal situation. Because a normal situation, the men line up in the front, with no clothes on, and the women behind them, no clothes in the situation. That's a mushkila, fitna, right? That's a problem. So what's the situation in that case? Hikmah. Do we leave off the salah? There's never a time we leave off the salah. Never a time that we don't pray. In that case, it describes a situation if the women are behind them, then, number one, the men stand in a straight line. Even the imam doesn't come up here so that when he makes such the men behind him have to look at him naked. Man foul, right? The women that's in the back praying behind the men, how they gonna pray like that with men that, you understand what I'm saying? So the women that are in the back, they don't pray right behind the men. They turn around and face the opposite way until the men are done praying. Once the men are done praying, they switch and do the same thing, so there's no fitna. And that we don't leave the salah. Hikmah, wisdom behind in the sharia. The law, everything has hikmah. If we don't understand the wisdom, then that's our deficiency. It's not from the deen. Not that the deen just is deficient. No, our understanding is deficient. So the issue of women and perfume outside the home is another issue that we don't have time to go too deep into, but it's worth looking into for the sisters. It's worth looking into. طيب. The next sunnah recommended act istihdad or istihdad. This is number 7. And this is to shave the hair on the private area. Yeah, inshallah. Right? To clean the private area. To clean the hair from around the private area. طيب.
would that be considered like whole body or just the private area?
This word here, istihdad, is for the private area specifically. It's for the private area specifically. Now the other areas, you mean like chest or something like that?
Because I was going to say, I think I came across something that said pubic. It might have been referencing it, but it said pubic hair.
Yeah.
And then I think in definition of like regular English, pubic hair is anything other than your head.
Anything other than?
Your head.
Oh, yeah, I never did that.
So it's like, that's where I was kind of confused. It was like,
Well, one thing, JD, he said, everybody hear that? He said that the translation somewhere said pubic hairs, but English, when you look up pubic hair, it says what?
It was something like other than, it didn't necessarily specify just the private area.
It didn't specify the private area, which means it could have been other areas of the body. Tayyib. What you can't do is use English terms, right, for Islamic Sharia definitions. You with me? Meaning, if you say, for example, it says, when you look at the explanation of what is meant by that, istihdad, it says, حَلْقُ شَعْرَ الَّذِي فَوْقَ الذَّكَرِ وَحَلَقَةُ الدُّبُرِ. It specifies shaving the areas around the private areas, Islamically. Like, what are we talking about when we say, what's istihdad? Islamically, shaving the areas around the private area. Now you might look up, or somebody might summarize it to make it easy for people to understand and say the pubic area. But then, because he says, a person says pubic, or they translate pubic, right? It doesn't always necessitate that it's restricted to that English translation. It could be, just like we say, wajib is obligatory, right? But we know now that obligatory holds a deeper meaning than just what we know is obligatory, right? If a person obligatory, if you don't do it, it's a sin and it's punishable. So you see how it goes. It could be a little more to it. But yeah, number 8, the next recommended act, hafashad, is to trim the mustache. To trim the mustache. And as he says, al-mubalagha fi qassi, to trim it and make it low, right? Trimming the mustache down and making it close to the lip. It doesn't have to be shaved. It doesn't have to be shaved, but trimming it down. Tayyib. Also, from the recommended acts, and you see all of these, this is why some of the explanations say the bab of the chapter of beautifying. So all this is from beautification of the body. Taqleem al-dhufr, trimming nails, right? We shouldn't be walking around, especially men, khilaf as-sunnah, trimming with these long, it's not from the sunnah. It's not something recommended. طيب. It says, وَنَتْفُ it, and also trimming the armpits. Trimming the armpits. The Muslim should not have like a ball of hair under there. Sunnah is that the armpits are trimmed, the hair around the private area is trimmed, is from cleanliness. All of this is under the chapter. All of these things at the end, it falls under the chapter of purification, cleanliness, and purifying other things. But now he switches from things that are recommended to things that are disliked. Things that are disliked. He says, well, kuriha. Fuck up my bad. 11? That was 10. 10. I said 11. I did say 11, didn't I? I'm sorry, 10. Yeah, that was 10. 8, 9, 10. But now he goes back to things that are disliked. Well, kuriha qaza'un. Qaza'. Qaza' is shaving part of the head and then leaving part of the head with hair on. Halq. Halq ba'd al-ras. To shave part of the head and then to leave part of the head with hair on it. Like what? A mohawk. Now, the issue of a fade, it's a touchy issue. I don't mess nobody up. No. A fade is not a halq. It's not a shave. Halq, that word halq is meant shaved. Most fades are not shaved, right? Unless you're talking about. That's a different situation. Allahu a'lam. But most fades are trims. Fades are generally trims. They're not necessarily halq. But if you're talking about a bald fade, then Allahu a'lam. That's entering into, it's a little close.
So you don't even mean like mohawk, like that the kids wear with the little, it'd be a mohawk, but it'd be more of a fade. You mean like a bald?
Bald, halq is shaved. Now, even with the mohawk that the kids are wearing, and some of the earlier men mentioned that might enter into another area. That can enter into imitating the kuffar, right? That the prohibition, that's a prohibition that could come in somewhere else. That if that's a specific haircut that specific people are wearing and they're known for specific things, and right, that the prohibition could be from that angle, not necessarily from the angle of qaza', the way the actual cutting. Cutting is the halq, the qaza' is mentioned here, that's disliked, is to shave part of the head and leave the other part with hair on it. Tayyib. He says another thing that is disliked, natfu shaving, to remove gray hairs, to remove the gray hair. Does anybody know why it's disliked to remove the gray hair? There you go. The hadith is a hadith that says that the gray is the nur of the Muslim. Innahu nur al-Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited plucking the gray hair, and that is the nur, the light of the Muslim. Thought you believe that there. It was disliked to pluck the gray hair, right? It was disliked to remove the gray hair, and the gray hair is the light of the Muslim. And why change the gray with henna? We leave that, don't worry, we leave it, inshallah. Tayyib. He says the third thing that's mentioned here that's disliked, taqfu udhnu sabi, piercing the ear of a young boy. Piercing the ear of a young boy, not a young girl. Piercing the ear of a young boy. As they say, that type of zina, that type of purification is not needed for a man. It's not for the beautifications of a man. This comes under, as he mentions here, he says, what's the hukum on piercing the ear of a young boy? He says, kuriha, disliked. Allah A'lam.
No, all right, so another question. If it's just a young boy, like, at the adult, would you just decide, like, I feel like I'm a good with ear piercing?
I mean, the reasoning that they give is not restricted to boys, to baby boys. As it says, for the male, la haja ila dhalika, that the male is not in need of that, and then it mentions that the female, she does it for beautification. It's a form of beautification for the female. So the male is not in need of that as a form of beautification. Now, the khilaf on it, we won't go into, but again, sometimes, like with the mohawk, it might not be the cut of the mohawk, but who we really imitate. It could be the prohibition, could be an imitating of a certain people. Certain people look like this, and the person wants to imitate that person, and the prohibition, making it haram, could come from that, trying to imitate a certain type of people. Tayyib. Tayyib. Now he flips to another hukum, another rule, and he says, وَيَجِبُ, wajib now. He says, وَيَجِبُ خِتَانُ ذَكَرٍ وَأُنْثَى. Circumcision. The obligation, yajibu khitanu, for men and women. Tayyib. He specifies that the circumcision is obligatory at a certain point. At a certain point. As he says, بُعِيد بُلُوغٍ مَعَ أَمْنِ الدَّرَرِ. When a person reaches puberty, at that point it becomes obligatory for them to be circumcised. Meaning before puberty, the obligation is not there. The obligation comes at puberty. Not that you can't. You can be circumcised, of course, before puberty. No problem. What if a person is not circumcised? By the time they reach puberty, it becomes obligatory to become circumcised with the condition that is not going to be any harm done to the person who's being circumcised at that point. If they go to the doctor and the doctor clarifies that if you get circumcised at this point, it's going to cause this damage, this, that, and the third, then the obligation is removed in that situation. Not from everybody who reaches puberty. So because one brother goes, for example, or one sister goes to the doctor when they reach puberty, and they say, no, in your case, this is going to cause danger. That means me, you go, and she goes and tells her friend, or he goes and tells a friend of his. That doesn't mean that his friend is also exempt. The friend has to go and it has to be confirmed that it's going to harm you. If it doesn't harm you, then it's still obligatory. Everybody clear? Case by case. It's not a blanket because they said you reach puberty, they said it was going to harm you, it's probably going to harm me too, so I'm going to just leave it. طيب. He says, and it's recommended when you send new qabadahu. It's recommended to be circumcised, of course, before the age of puberty. Before the age of puberty, will you qura? Y'all hear these words? All throughout the book. That's why you gotta understand the terminology. The terminology is important because it's going to keep coming over and over and over. And there's nothing like not knowing, you're hearing the same word and not knowing what it means. So he says it's recommended, your son knew, to be circumcised before a person reaches puberty. وَيُقْرَى سَابِعًا وِلَادَتِهِ. Is this like to specify on the 7th day, I'm going to have my child circumcised. Right? وَمِنْهَا إِلَيْهِ, those 7 days. And they say that this was a practice of the Jews. So not to imitate the Jews, to single out that 7th day of circumcision. They say it's dislike to do that as not to imitate a practice of the Jews. Clear? Any questions? طيب. طيب. He says, فصل فروض الوضوء 6. Now he moves into the furud, the obligatory things for wudu. Those things that are obligatory in wudu, furud wudu, something is followed. Now, we all know what wudu is, right? We all know what wudu is. Does anybody not know what wudu is? That's the better question. And this is not a trick question, because the ulama, they define wudu. They give a definition for wudu. Now we might say, everybody knows what wudu is, right? But they give a definition of wudu. Which is isti'mal al-ma. Now, we already know it's using water, right? Gotta use water for wudu, right? Tayyib. 3 types of water. What type of water are we using? What? Ma tahur. Right? So they say isti'mal ma tahur. The use of that pure water, the first category that we did, bi niyatin, with the intention that a person has the intention to make wudu, right? Because wudu is worship, and every worship needs an intention. And they specify في الأعضاء الأربعة على صفة مخصوصة, that pure water is used, a person has the intention to make wudu on 4 body parts. And they do it in a specific way. 4 body parts. Clear? 4 body parts for wudu. Sahih? Tayyib. He says, furud wudu. And some have said the furud are the arkan, the pillars of wudu. They can't be missed. These 4 things cannot be missed. And this word is going to come up again. Fard, Rukn, Arkan, pillar and pillars, this is going to come up again. As will also Shart or Shurut, a condition. The conditions will come up again also. طيب. He says there's six things that are obligatory for the wudu to be correct. We should know 4 of them already, right? 4 of them are what? Huh? The niyyah. Like the niyyah you need for everything, not just wudu. You do the niyyah you need for every act of worship. Specifically for wudu, there's 6 things we have to do for wudu. 4 of them we should already know from the rip, as we say. Huh? This ain't a trick question, y'all. I'm not trying to trick you. Huh? Yeah, wash your hands. That's 3, huh? Ears. That's 4 now. We say that's 4 and we ain't even getting it with. We still got arms, we still got feet, right? Like the things that I mentioned in, as they call it, the ayatul wudu, Surah al-Ma'idah. And Surah al-Ma'idah, the ayat for wudu, and Surah al-Ma'idah. The obligatory things that can be missed, غسل الوجه مع المضمضة والاستنشاق. Washing the face along with madmada, cleaning the mouth out, واستنشاق, and cleaning out the nose. Washing the face along with rinsing the mouth out. This is number 1. Along with rinsing the mouth out and cleaning out the nose. Istinshaq. Cleaning the mouth out is al-madmada. Wastinshaq is cleaning out the nose. طيب.
What's the 3?
Huh?
What's the 3?
Say it again.
What's the 3 times?
JD, that's a good question. 1 time or 3 times?
Say what?
The obligation is 1 time. Okay, the sunnah is 2 or 3 times. The obligation means the person has to do it at least once, which is going to be important when we get a little further. Hold on.
And so would we go more than 3? Would that be fall into the rule, or would that be
Some have said disliked. Some have said dislike to go above 3 times. And that's an issue. That is an issue that's mentioned. A person that does more than 3. Because 3 is the maximum that the Prophet ﷺ did. The person has no need to go above that. So he says, washing the face along with cleaning out the mouth and cleaning out the nose. This is number 1. طيب. Can't be missed. وغسل اليدين. وغسل اليدين. Washing the hands. Washing the hands, and where does the hands start, y'all? It's important. The fingertips to where? So let's say if I'm starting wudu, I wash my face and clean out my mouth. طيب. After that, I wash my hands. So, what's the hand? Killer? This? So when you make wudu, you wash your mouth and your face and then you wash your hand right here? Is that what you do? I'm talking about when you stand and make wudu, you go to the sink, right? After you do your face, right, you do your mouth and your nose. What do you do next? You do your hand, right? I want to know what you do when you make wudu. I'm just asking a question now. All right, we passed that. After the face, after you do your face.
your arms to your wrist?
Hey, we say arm. The yed in Arabic is also from here. This is considered a yed. It says yed, but it's talking about this here. All right? Of course, the first one we talking about, he didn't even talk about that. The first washing that everybody's talking about, when I go to the sink, I wash my hands. He didn't mention that at all, which means that it's not from what? That don't mean it's not from
So it's
sunnah.
not far.
But it's not obligatory. That's why when you go into a masjid and the brother turns on the water and he starts with his mouth, right? Then what, they shout out? He started with the mouth, he didn't start with the hands. Right? He started with the mouth, he didn't start with the hands. He turns on the water and he starts with the mouth and the nose. Right? Then he does his face 3 times. He never turned it on like we know. He didn't turn on the water and do this 3 times and do this 3 times. He didn't do that. He turned on the water and he started with the mouth and the nose and then he went to the face and he finished his wudu. And you sat there and said, right? Everybody with me? طيب. That's because it was mentioned in the ayah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, which mentioned in the ayah, they say, Allah started with the face. Allah didn't say you had to wash your hands 3 times in the beginning, in the ayah, Surah Al-Ma'idah. So they say that it's obligatory. It's not the washing of the hands that we talking about are sunnah, because the Prophet washed his hands before that, right? But they don't fall under the category of being obligatory. So he says the second thing, ghasl yad, and that washing of the hand is including the arm with the elbow, including the elbow. And then he says, rijlain, in the 2 feet, washing the 2 feet. And this is number 4, washing the 2 feet, including the ankle. Rijlain ma'al with the 2 ankles, including the ankles, up to and including the ankles. Don't leave the ankles dry. There's a hadith where the Prophet saw a man, the size of a quarter was dry on his ankle, told him to go back and make wudu over. So that was number 3, the washing of the ankles. The washing of the feet with the ankles. Number 4 is what? Masfur jami' al-ras ma'al udhunayn. Wiping the head, including the ears. 4. That's 4, right? It is not in order that we do it in wudu. He mentioned the feet before he mentioned.
I would have to agree with washing the arm to the, or was that part 2?
That was part of 2. Washing the hand includes the elbow. Right? Washing the hand includes the elbow. Washing the foot includes the ankle. And the wiping of the head, they're not agree wiping the head, but they differ on how much of the hair do you have to wipe. How much hair does a person have to wipe? They're differ on that. How much hair does that have to wipe? Safest thing, and there's no argument in the wiping of the head like we know, to the back, to the front. That's why it says, Mashu jami' al-ras ma'al udhunayn, in the ears, cleaning of the ears, wiping the ears out also. Al-udhunayn and al-ras. The Prophet said that the 2 ears are from the head. طيب. That was number 4.
It doesn't say anything about between the toes?
No.
Understood the foot is just...
Everybody have a question? It doesn't say anything about between the toes. Under the what? Furu, obligatory. These are things that are obligatory. But that's going to come. That's going to come. Let's see if it's going to come tonight. Inshallah, it's coming, inshallah. Takhleel, they call it. Takhleel is to go between the toes and the hand. But we're mentioning now just for benefit. The understanding is, as long as the water hits everything, you don't have to do that because it's already washed. As long as the water hits between the toes, it's not obligatory to do this between the toes. But if the water doesn't get between the toes, then it becomes obligatory to do this. Clear? Even with the hand. Some people, they got, the hands are thick, right? You can see sometimes when a brother make wudu and it's still ash. Sometimes it's ash, there's no water hit that, right? He did his whole arm and everything and wiped all of this, and in between his fingers are dry. That means he missed the spot. In that case, he has to do that. That becomes obligatory in that case. But what if I do this and everything is hit? Then this is sunnah. That takhleel. That becomes sunnah in that case, and the same thing for the feet. As long as the water hits it and gets between it, then it's not obligatory to do it, but it's still recommended to do it. طيب. After, so the four things, washing the face, the nose and the mouth included, washing the hand and the arms up into the elbow, washing the feet up into the, including the ankles, wiping the head, wiping the entire head, and wiping the ears. It says number five, what tartib, doing those things in order. Doing it in order, meaning in order. Not the order that he mentioned, the order that's mentioned in the ayah that we know. Washing the face, and then washing the hands, and then wiping, and then washing the feet up to and including the ankles. Now, the ayah is used as dalil for, or two things. For those body parts, and the ayah is used to show that it has to be done in order. So, in this case, some of the ulama differ. Well, they don't differ, they did explain. Why, how do you know that the ayah shows that it has to be in order? They say that everything is mentioned in the ayah is wash this, wash this, wash this. And then Allah says, wash this. He says, wipe the heads. Allah mentions in the middle of washing things, He mentions wipe. Then He goes back to wash. And they show that shows that benefit, shows that it should be done in that order. Everybody with me? Allah says, wash your face. Right? And Allah says, فَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, wash your faces. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, and wash your hands up into your elbows, including the elbows. Then Allah says, after wash, وَامْسَحُوا, wipe. Wipe بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, wipe your heads. Then Allah goes back to wash and wash the feet, right? So they say the fact that that wipe is put in the middle of all those washes shows that that order should be held. That order should be held. So number 5 was the order, along with the action of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the way he made the wudu in that order. And so that was number 5, order. And number 6, muwalat, which is to continuously do it. So you can make it in one session. Meaning, you don't wash 2 body parts, then go have a conversation, come back, and then say, you know what, I got finished, go make wudu. Let me go finish making wudu so we can pray. And then pick up where you left off. And they say the dhabit, how do you know when something is continuous, if the wudu is continuous or not? Does anybody know? It would depend on the person.
Not the person, but see somebody else.
That is still wet. If it dries up, if the body part dries up, then they say that's been too long of a gap, right? So a person, for example, they wash their hands, they wash their face, they wash their right arm. Somebody walks up, brother from out of town, says they have a conversation. They stop in the middle, they have a conversation. I didn't know you was coming, please, you should tell me. All right? Everything dries up. I said, hold on, let me finish making this wudu real quick. And the water is dry, and you need to start from the beginning. That's not considered wudu in a continuous fashion like that. But clear? It says, وَالنِّيَّةُ شَرْطٌ لِكُلِّ طَهَارَةٍ شَرْعِيَّةٍ. He says now that the intention is a condition for every form of purification. Anything that we want to do that's a part of worship, wudu, ghusl, at-tayammum, right? Those tahara shar'iyya, that the intention is a condition. It's a condition. And if the condition is not filled, then the action coming after it is not correct. Clear? If the condition is not filled, a prerequisite for something, then that means the action after it is also not correct. So he says specifically that the tahara shar'iyya, cleansing, needs an intention, except for the situation we spoke about before. When don't we need an intention for cleaning something? We spoke about that. Yeah, for example, somebody urinated in the corner, it rains and it removes the urine. Removing the najasa. Or removing some filth, right? If you're removing filth, if water removes it off, it doesn't necessarily have to have a niyyah to remove the filth, right? It's possible that a non-Muslim could come by and remove it. But we're going to say that don't count because it wasn't a Muslim who did it? No, as long as it's done and it's done, then it counts. طيب. He says also the issue of for intercourse, if a man is married to a non-Muslim woman, as he says, kitabiyya. Kitabiyya, because she's either, the permissibility of marrying non-Muslim women is restricted to Christian women and Jewish women. Not all non-Muslim women are permissible to marry. The kitabiyya is the Christian woman or the Jewish woman. طيب. We know that in order to have intercourse with your wife, it's not permissible to have intercourse with her while she's on her mens. Right? طيب. When she comes off her menses, what has to happen before intercourse? Huh? الغسل. طيب. الغسل is ibadah. Right? الغسل is ibadah. طيب. The Christian or the Jewish woman, that's his wife. Huh? And every ibadah needs what? A niyyah, intention. His wife is Christian, she's Jewish, right? She's come off her menses, right? She gotta make ghusl, right? How's she gonna make a ghusl without intention? Like I said, intention, what's the niyyah? All the niyyah go back to ikhlas lillah, number one, the intention. So she, right? We're not talking about a general, she's washing up. No. So in this case, it's like these are the two situations he's mentioning that don't need an intention. These situations that he's mentioning right now don't need a niyyah, which is what? If it's urine on the ground and it rains and the rain wipes away the urine, then you can pray there because the urine is gone. The filth is removed without a person with a niyyah doing it. Clear? Secondly, the kitabiyya. The man married a woman that's not a Muslim and she's Jewish or she's Christian. She comes off her menses, she has to make a ghusl, she has to clean herself. That cleansing is a cleansing for what? It's a cleansing of the area, not necessarily a cleansing for the salah. Right? As they say, it's a cleansing for what? For intercourse. It's not a cleansing for worship. Right? We make wudhu. The Muslim woman makes wudhu, or she makes a ghusl when she comes off her menses. She makes a ghusl if she's married, she has a husband, right? They can't go to her, she cleans herself, and she has to pray. She can't pray without making a ghusl. So she has to have that intention because eventually that intention is worship for her, right? The non-Muslim woman is making a ghusl not for worship, but for to remove that block of the man, her husband, which is a Muslim, being able to have intercourse with him. Oh yeah. We'll read this last part and stop here. He says, وَتَسْمِيَةُ وَاجِبَةٌ فِي وُضُوءٍ. Now he's going to mention when is it obligatory to say Bismillah. The times that it is obligatory to say Bismillah. And if we say wajibah, right, then what? If a person doesn't say it, and this is an issue, and the terminologies used are also issues, the terms used. Some say it's a shart, some say it's a condition, right, to say the Bismillah. If it's a condition, what if a person doesn't say Bismillah before wudu? Right, then the wudu is invalid. So the terminologies are, I won't say interchangeable, but a lot of times it depends on the author, what's meant by it.
So if something is invalid, are you still sinful if you don't do
If something is invalid, are you sinful?
Well, I mean, my fault. If something is a condition, are you sinful if you don't like perform the condition?
Intentionally? Like, I say, Methalan, a person knows. Because this is what intentional looks like. Intentionally, a person knows that wudu is a condition for the salah. They know they're not in wudu. They come to the masjid, it's time to pray maghrib. They know they need to make wudu. The people are praying, he just or she just gets in the line. I ain't gonna make wudu for this. Intentionally, that's intentional. Language, that's a whole discussion on a person who does that.
So I'm going to say that necessarily make you sinful, or do they just got to go make you do it?
No, that's definitely sinful. How big of a sin, the ulama different, that's a big, I don't want to go into that, but that's not the issue, as he's going to mention at the end of the statement, that when does the tasmiyah, when does the basmala drop off? Let's start off as obligatory when a person makes wudu, number one. When a person makes a ghusl, number two. When a person makes tayammum, tayammum. 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 From the beginning, the tasmiyah, the basmala, obligatory for wudu, obligatory on the ghusl, obligatory for tayammum, which we say tayammum, which is dry, as they say, dry ablution, right? When you use dirt, right? That's number three. He says, well, ghusli yaday qa'im min nawm al-layl naqidan liwuduhin. The fourth one, obligatory, the basmala obligatory when the person who wakes up, right? They wake up in the morning, and they were asleep that breaks your wudu. So they mention it like this specifically based on other issues that are connected to it. There's a difference between a person who's asleep and a person, as we say, was nodding. The person who's nodding is not necessarily asleep. He or she can hear what's going on around him. I heard you, right? I didn't know who it was. I heard you talking. I heard y'all talking on such and such, right? The nodding. And that's based on a hadith, the Sahaba, that they were waiting and they would nod, right? But they wouldn't be asleep. And then they prayed like that. So all, as we say, nods, if you nod off, it doesn't always break the wudu. Right? We're talking about the wudu that is broken due to a sleep. A person's sleep, right? They wake up in the morning, qa'im min nawm, laylan naqili wudu. So they will sleep at night, they woke up, and they're going to do what? Wash their hands. Now this is a whole issue about washing the hands when you wake up before you put your hand into some water or something like that. That's a whole issue about the washing of the hands. A hadith connected to the person who gets up the obligation of washing the hands before you put your hand in some water. Because the Prophet said, a person that will sleep, you don't know what? You don't know what you did with your hands when you were asleep. The person doesn't know. You could have touched this product, you could put your hand in some najas, some filth. You could have put your hand in anything while you were asleep. And then you wake up in the morning and you go put your hand in some water and you do what to the water? Now the person can't use the water for wudu, it can't. So it's a hadith discussing all of that about the person who has to do that. Now the issue is the person who gets up, I understand I have to wash my hands before. So when I get up to go wash my hands, to say what? Bismillah, that person is connected to that issue. So he mentions the 4 times where the Bismillah is wajib, is obligatory. And he says at the end, we stop here, وَتَسْقُطُ سَهْوًا وَجَهْلًا. And he says that if the obligation drops off for the person who forgets to say Bismillah, the person forgets, not intentionally, forget to say Bismillah in one of these areas, one of these 4 areas. Or, as he says, jahlan, a person didn't know they had to say Bismillah in one of those 4 areas. Then the obligation drops. Clear? It doesn't mean that the Bismillah is not obligatory in these areas. It means this person did not know that they were supposed to have, they had to say Bismillah. So for that person, in that situation, it dropped off. This person forgot. So in this case, for this person, the obligation drops off, meaning they don't have to go back and do it over. That's what that means. Clear? Doesn't mean that everybody can just take that as a blanket statement. No, in this case, if this is the case and you forgot, you don't have to say, you know what? I prayed Dhuhr, but I forgot to say Wudhu, and it's Asr now. Right? Dang, I forgot to say Bismillah when I made Wudhu. Well, if you forgot, then you fall under the person that forgot. So that doesn't mean, because if you forgot, if you do that and you say, it leads to something else. But if I didn't say the Wudhu, if I say Bismillah my Wudhu, now my Wudhu is not correct. If my Wudhu is not correct, and my Salah is not correct, so now I got to pray over. You with me? No, if a person forgot to say it, or they didn't know they had to say it, then they say this person is excused from that ruling in that case.
So it's under that, scholars believe that it is wise to wash your hands when you go.
Yes. Yes, before putting them into some water. That's the issue. As again, this is a summarized book, so everything is not mentioned in there. Right? It mentions a lot of things. He brings it like this. He brought it in another area, but it's a whole issue by itself. But he's brought it under the area where it's obligatory.
Say putting it in water, like daytime.
Like a dish, you might have a dish of water. You might have a container with water in it. Right? Oh, it's a joint behind you, I think. Question. Fuck one. Fuck.
I missed the whistle part. I had a question about whistle.
We didn't do ghusl though. We just obligatory to say Bismillah when you make a ghusl. We didn't get to chant the ghusl. We didn't do the ghusl. We did the wudu. If we can mention Allah's name in the bathroom, and do we say the Bismillah? It says Bismillah. I'm assuming it says for wudu or ghusl. Jadid. That's another issue that the ulama explained. If you can't say you should, what's the hukum on mentioning Allah's name in the bathroom, number one? Huh? We said something about that last week, right? Did we? Did we talk about that last week?
We talk about making the Quran.
With Allah's names.
The word of Allah.
The word of Allah. Carrying the word of Allah, some with Allah's name, particularly or his names and attributes. Some have said that we spoke about returning the salams in the bathroom while a person was using the bathroom. Some have said that a person mentions it, and some have said that they mention it. How do you say it? Lightly, like very light on the tongue. Some have said no, the other men differ. Some of these things are mentioned, as we say, on the surface. Because if we go into detail for everything, it's khilaf on everything. Not on everything, not like that, but a lot of difference of opinion. Some have said you mentioned it in your heart, and some have said you say it, but not, you try to kind of mumble it, if we could say, to mumble it like that. Wallahu a'lam. Any others? Okay. The last two pillars of wudu was order, to do them in order, and to do them continuously, meaning that you don't let one of the body parts dry up and then come back and do another body part.
So is it one of the body parts, or is it everything that you do?
One of the body parts. You don't let it dry up. So if you wash one arm and you come back, right, and your arm is dried up, right? Usually, generally, if the last thing you did is dry, then probably the thing you did before that is dry too, generally. And this is in a normal weather pattern, not in, because of course stuff dries up when it's really hot. So something might dry up faster than usual, right? We're talking about normal weather conditions that you don't allow to dry. That's the thought, they call that a dhabit. That's the gauge that you can use if it's continuous or not. Did the body parts that are already washed dry up? If they dried up, then I need to start over. Tayyib? Is it a sin to wipe the water off? It's not a sin to wipe the water off. Well, do y'all know the hadith about the water that drips from the person making wudu? There you go. So in that case, things like that, because something is better to do, it doesn't always mean you can't do the other thing, right? Because something is better to do it like this, it doesn't mean the other way can't be done necessarily all the time. Sometimes, but not all the time. Any others? We'll continue next week because we have to finish the chapter of Wudhu. We're not finished the chapter of Wudhu. And then we'll start next week the chapter of wiping over the khuf. What you can wipe over from socks when making Wudhu. Inshallah. Everybody look good here. About what you can wipe over. What socks, what length of the sock, what did the sock look like, what type of material is permissible to wipe over. Or can you just wipe over anything that's on your foot? You wipe over anything that's on your foot. As long as you got a sock on, you can wipe over it. Does it have to be leather? Right? What if it got a hole in it? What if it has a hole in it? Right? Ankle socks. Can you wipe over ankle socks? Got to be above your ankle. What about the no-shows? No-show socks. You can wear them. No-shows. No-shows. It's a sock. It's a sock. Right? So we'll do that next week, inshallah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.